Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my first look at the Sony A74. Now, I've been waiting quite a while to get my hands on this. The loaner just arrived from Sony, so I've got a few weeks to spend with this and figure out whether or not it really is the best camera of its kind here in 2022. And at least on paper and per the way it was received and reviewed, it seems like it's tough to beat. I say that because at $2,500 US, and I will include a link in the description, we've got an improvement in just about every area on this camera from the previous generation. Now, does that mean if you own the A7 III, you should throw it out and get this? And by throw it out, I mean sell it, gift it. I don't mean literally toss it in the trash. The answer is no. It really depends on what you need. But there is no question that the A7 IV does improve on just about literally every element and aspect of the previous generation. So first and foremost, we now have a 33 megapixel sensor. And part of the beauty of this new sensor, even though I've yet to test it, which of course I will be testing, is that it actually outperforms the A7 III's 24 megapixel sensor in low light conditions. Now, traditionally, higher resolution, more megapixels means you're going to give up some of that low light capability, generally speaking. But in this case, there is no trade-off. In fact, it's only a benefit. So already a big win, if true, and from what I've seen it is, in still performance. Still 10 frames per second, but the autofocus system is revamped. We now have real-time tracking and real-time eye autofocus in video as well. Active steady shot, which means handheld shooting of video, will be greatly improved. We also, critically important, now have 10-bit internal recording, which means when you go to use S-Log3 or any other profiles that really do need that 10-bit video, you're going to get the experience you should have gotten that unfortunately couldn't be delivered with the 8-bit video back on the A7 III that preceded this. In addition to that, it doesn't mean that rolling shutter is not an issue on this camera. I imagine we'll still experience some, but already those features are critical. So 4K at 24p, 4K at 30, you're getting a full readout. If you go 4K 60, however, it will be cropped. Do I think that's a big deal? No. I mean, it's nice that Sony gave us 4K 60 on this camera. No 4K 120. That's reserved for upper echelon models. Another really nice thing about this new camera, EVF and display. So 3.68 million dots on the EVF, which means a world of difference compared to the older gen EVF on the A7 III. And then with the display, even though the resolution is nothing to get too excited about, it is a fully articulating display with touchscreen and the new menu system. So that already, in my opinion, jumps you into the current crop of cameras from Sony that really otherwise, you're not going to find this on any other models. I mean, the A1, the A7S III, the FX3, those are the cameras, that enjoy this. And now, of course, we can add the Sony A7 IV to that list of cameras. So if you care about having the fully articulating touchscreen display, you've got it. To me, the most important elements, though, of this camera, again, lie in that autofocus system, the higher resolution, and better low-light performance. And then in addition to all of that, of course, when it comes to your SD cards, we now have support for Compact Flash Express Type A, which is something, again, that was only on the models I mentioned earlier. So nice to see that support. Of course, dual slots. You can still use traditional SD cards, but just be aware of the speeds in terms of what you plan on doing. Battery type is the same as every other full-frame Sony modern camera. However, with all of the new features that I've mentioned, better EVF, higher res touchscreen display, as well as, of course, the real-time tracking, over 700 points of phase detection, over 400 of contrast, it does amount to less battery life. So with the A7 III, we were looking at a little over 700 shots on average. Here, we're looking at a little under 600. But when you take into account all of the things Sony has put into this camera, I really think that is acceptable. And I'm not in any way qualifying a loss of battery life. It's just obvious that we don't have a new battery type, so you've got to be realistic about what would transpire. So a quick look at the I/O. Of course, Type-C, nothing new anymore. Once upon a time, a rarity with Sony cameras, headphone microphone jack, and of course Sony's multi-port. The USB-C connection here is a 3.2, and of course this body is weather sealed, and last but not least, if my nail can permit us to take a look, we have a full-size HDMI out. And of course external recording is completely capable on this camera, for anyone wondering why wouldn't it be. Just a really well-rounded piece of kit. Also a little bit of a redesign on the dials here, something I can't show you. I don't have the A7 III in studio, but this is, in my opinion, going to be another thing that's well received, as it has been to begin with. So overall, robust camera, no question about it. Improvement in the overall autofocus system. We now have 10-bit internal. We have 4K 60, even if it's cropped. I think that's a great capability that otherwise didn't exist on this camera. Active steady shot, as I mentioned earlier, is going to make it so those of you that want to be able to shoot handheld in a pinch can do so. And overall, that real-time eye autofocus and tracking being improved, color science being improved, and now really being able to fully utilize color profiles that you just couldn't practically use as intended with the A7 III, make this not only a clear and far away winner compared to the A7 III, it makes it one of the most advanced hybrids on the market at its price point. Again, $2,500 US makes this tough to beat. Now, it's only a first look today, and of course over time, I don't have that much time with it, I will attempt to answer as many questions as I can about this camera. But to me, having also the increased buffer, the A7 III I think topped out at a little over 80 raw images. This tops out at over 120. I mean, there is literally not a single area where I could say to you, this was a step backwards. And that's important. I mean, it took several years to get this update. And while it wouldn't sway me from purchasing the FX3 that I'm filming on now, or if I had been interested, to go with the A7S III, which I did have to think long and hard about when opting for the FX3, this camera is really, a dynamic device, much like the A1. Granted, it doesn't touch the A1's overall specifications and capabilities when it comes to, the 30 frames per second, the 50 megapixel sensor, the 8K video, beyond the 4K capabilities that it has to offer. It very much in the same way, though, occupies a special space of being really good. Again, I haven't put it through its paces, but the way it's been received in just about everything that it does. So that makes it unique. I mean, if the only shortcoming is that the 4K 60 is cropped and that we've got a little bit of rolling shutter to deal with, this is a phenomenal body at $2,500. And I think that people with that logic employed that already own the A7 III, they're probably going to want this unless they're content with what the A7 III does. If any of the shortcomings of the A7 III have bothered them since ownership, long-term or short-term, this is the logical way to go because it fixes pretty much every single user complaint, in my opinion. Top to bottom. Now, if you desire more resolution, that to me is not a logical pathway. While I think the 33 with no performance degradation, in fact, improved performance, is a great step from the 24 megapixel sensor found in the A7 III, I wouldn't recommend this camera because of the resolution gain. If you really demand higher resolution, that's what the A7R line is for. So whether that means looking at, the A7R4, which I still own and love, its 60 megapixel sensor is still fantastic. And while, cameras like the A1 are amazing, this still has a place in the market for a reason. It still has higher resolution, and a lot of people prefer it for that reason for specific types of photography, obviously. Now, and also it's very similarly priced to the A7 IV. On the other hand, if you want to save some money and you still need that extra resolution, even the old A7R II is still a fantastic camera. And if you want something a little bit more modern that has the current battery type and better autofocus performance, that's what the A7R III, I think, has to offer. So a deeper discussion for another time when I've spent more time with this to really have a more, I would say, graduated and formal opinion on it. But that gives you a pretty quick summary of what to expect from this pound and nearly a half body that just has great video, great still features, and offers everything Sony's most expensive modern lineup of cameras brings to the table between its EVF and touchscreen display that fully articulates, and as I've mentioned, also incorporates the brand new menu system. So I don't have that much time with it, but I'll do my best to give you as much information as I possibly can on this brand new offering, which I think is going to be a winner. And those of you that follow my channel already know that I love hybrid cameras like this. Unfortunately, it's something where I'm pretty much well satisfied with what I have now, but I could see why this is a sweet spot for someone like myself to shoot with, because unlike my FX3 or the A7S III, this does have great video features in spite of that crop at 4K 60. Just having, the 10-bit is already important enough to me personally. But then on the flip side, when I want to shoot stills, 33 megapixels makes me a happy man. Whereas my FX3, obviously the 12 megapixel sensor has its advantages for video, but on the still side, I really don't see any advantages. It's better than nothing. Same applies to the A7S III. So that makes this camera attractive to me personally, that it is more of a hybrid, but doesn't slack on the video, or at least that is the promise. Of course, we will find out about how all of these brand new features stack up top to bottom. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, please feel free to subscribe, and please stay safe. Later.